Hello, everyone, and welcome for joining us today.
Hi.
I think we're waiting. Yep, we're waiting just for one more panelist, but out of the respect for everyone's time, we're just going to get going on introductions, and when they join us, then they can hop right on in. So thank you so much for joining us today for this Who We Are panel, talking about adoptees connecting through DNA testing. We have some great panelists who have graciously joined us today to talk about their experiences finding family members through DNA testing, and I won't go into their stories. I will let them talk about their experiences. But before I introduce you to all of our lovely panelists, just some quick housekeeping items. There will be a chance for Q&A at the very end from our audience. So please feel free to use the chat box. The chat box is located either at the top of your screen, the bottom, or the side, wherever your little toolbar is for your Zoom. I don't know where it is, just because if you're calling in from a tablet or laptop, whatnot, it's located at various places, but feel free to use that chat box. You can type in a Q&A throughout the presentation, but we will be taking questions at the very end. I'll be facilitating those. Just to let you all know, you all attendees, we can't see you. Your cameras are off, but you communicate to us through the chat box, but you can see all of our lovely faces. So use that chat box. And then if you have any other questions, feel free to use the chat box to say like, hey, can't hear you, or can you repeat that? Use that chat box as well. We are recording this session, so if for some reason you get knocked offline or whatnot, just feel free to send me an email and we can send you the link once we get this uploaded. Once it's uploaded, and we can send you this link to the recording. So without further ado, I would like to start with introducing our wonderful panelists. As you can see, we have 4 of the 5. I don't think our last one is on yet. Lynn, if you're here, feel free just to say, hey.
I don't think she's on yet.
Okay, all right. Paige, be on the lookout for her.
I will, I'll text her quick too.
All right, thank you. But who would like to go first with introducing yourself? Any takers?
I can go while we're waiting for her.
All right, perfect. Paige.
So I am Paige. I'm 36 and I live in Minnesota. Is everybody in here from Minnesota, or are we all just, nope. Okay, well, I'm in a rural area, but I was adopted at 5 months old from Seoul, and then adopted, let's see. So I was adopted May 30th, 1985, and I'm an only child. I grew up in the Twin Cities, and I had a really great childhood, but I'm an only child, so I've always wondered, do I have any brothers and sisters? I did want to find, birth family just because of, health reasons and stuff, like most of us do, but, and I kind of hit a roadblock. I think when I was 18 is when I started, I believe I had to be 18 in order to start, legally wise, but, and it just was like, I don't know, it was tough because then I started going into, oh, there I am. Started, you're graduating from high school, trying to figure out what your career is going to be. I'm a cosmetologist, so I jumped right into that right out of high school. And, then you do all the college kind of stuff, and then you start a family and all that. So it kind of got pushed to the back burner, but it's still in the back of my brain, that I really needed to find this. And I just really wanted to see if I had any siblings. Just the only child thing was really heavy on my brain. So no luck, I worked with Christine for a while, and just kind of, was in the groups, and just, it was fun to connect with other people, to know other people are out there like me, but it wasn't, not getting anywhere, which I was kind of fine with. And then I started with Ancestry DNA, which at the time, a few years ago, didn't have a big database. So then I heard 23andMe was really, really popular for adoptees, especially from South Korea or that way. So I decided to go and do that. And that's what popped up. Actually, I'm sorry, it was Ancestry DNA is what I found out. I found Lynn, which she's jumping on as we speak, she said. So, yeah, it said first to second cousin. So I thought that was really cool because as you know, I'll know that I had like 450 distant cousins, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. But, you know, and, you know, talking with my husband, it was kind of, he just didn't get it, you know, because he's like, well, that's such a small percentage. I'm like, yeah, but they're related somehow to me. So I thought that was kind of cool, but they're so distant. So when I found this first to second cousin, I thought that was really great. So reached out to her, and we're like trying to figure out, you know, how close we were, you know, first to second, how that could work out. And we found out we were about an hour away from each other. So that was really, really awesome just to be so close. And we didn't even really know it all our lives. And we're the same age. And so yeah, that was really, really cool. And then I told her to do the 23andMe because it was a little bit more accurate, I believe. Like I said, for the adoptees. So she did that, and that came back first cousin. So we've been kind of just trying to figure out, we think our moms were sisters. And she actually knew a little bit more of our background that she shared with me. So, and yeah, we keep in touch. We try and get together, you know, every few months or so, just with their lives being so busy. But then, you know, COVID happened. So that kind of got pushed to the back burner. And, but we were actually going to try and meet up yesterday, but it didn't work out. But yeah, it's been awesome just to have that connection. So.
I'm here now.
Oh, she's here.
Wonderful. Hi, Lynn. Thank you.
Hi.
We're like, where are you?
I'm sorry. We had a doula meeting and it went super, super long. We're trying to figure out all the, you know, the planning for the baby and everything. So I'm sorry I'm late. I apologize.
Not a problem. Here now. I understand it's a busy time for everyone. Thank you so much. And I know especially for you, it's a busy time. It's great to see you. Paige just did her introduction, so I don't know if you want to take a breather or if you want to do your introduction. Otherwise, you can ask somebody else. But
somebody go first, and then I'll pop in.
All right, sounds perfect. So who wants to go next?
I can go next. Okay, so my name is Leanne, and I was adopted from South Korea at 6 months old into a family in central New Jersey. So my entire life, I've pretty much lived in different regions of New Jersey. It's hard for me to envision leaving the East Coast. But so I grew up, here's some photos. So I grew up in a family with one younger brother who was also adopted, but not biologically related. And you can see him there. He's really cute. And now I live in South Jersey. I'm married and I have 2 biological children. So I basically started this journey. I started out doing birth search through my agency and I found some information. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that later, so I'm not going to go into a whole ton of detail right now, but I found out some information. I felt pretty confident that I had all of the information there was to find. So when I sent away for this DNA test, I went through, originally I did 325 camera, the free kit that they send to adoptees. So I did that one first, and I didn't really find anything close. And then I saw a good deal on the 23andMe kits in 2020. So I took a chance on that one. And I kind of I was going into it with 0 expectations because I thought I already knew my whole story in terms of my birth family. So it was fully for just reasons to find out health information and see if there was anything that I should be concerned about that they could detect. But then to my huge surprise, my results came back and it said 2 immediate biological siblings, full siblings. So at first I thought it was actually possibly my siblings in Korea that I had learned about, that they existed but had no contact with. And then I was surprised to find out that Scott and Katie, who are also on this call, are my full older biological siblings, and we've all been adopted to the United States, which is nice. I mean, COVID stinks because I haven't been able to meet them in person yet, but we're hoping sometime soon when things calm down a little. I don't know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks.
All right. So Scott or Katie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next.
Perfect.
So yeah, my name's Scott McCrary. I'm 37. I was adopted about 5 months old to a family in Oklahoma City. They had two biological daughters. Basically, they were a little bit older in age, and they wanted a boy, so they adopted rather than try for another one. As far as biological searching and things like that, I honestly had never really thought about it. The only reason I did any of the DNA testing, I started with Ancestry, is because my wife is big into her family genealogy and family history. So I figured, why not try it, see what it says. And I did Ancestry first. It came back and said that I was 100% East Asian. And I was just like, well, that's great, because probably could have told you that. So then we did some research and we found out that 23andMe sounded like it had a little bit more information as far as Asian ethnicities go. So we got that one, tried it. From that, about a year or so, maybe after I did it, is when I got notified that I did have a full biological sister in Katie. And, that just whole situation just blows your mind. I'd never thought that I would ever find any sort of family outside the ones that show, like fourth, fifth, sixth cousins, things like that you're probably never really going to meet or have a connection with. And then again, like a year and a half later, had it happen all over again, finding out about Lee through 23andMe as well. And it's just not a way to describe it. But basically, it's like every single emotion you can have in your life happening at the same time. But it was awesome. It's so great. I'm glad, obviously, that I did do it. I know our results probably aren't, a typical outcome from doing DNA testing with this, but still glad I did it. And, it's been amazing ever since.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott. All right. Should we jump to Katie, last but not least of the trio?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Katie Aries, and I was born in South Korea and adopted at the age of about 3 months to a suburb of Philadelphia. So I spent some of my time up in Pennsylvania, but then I like to say my formative years were spent growing up in Central Florida. I now live in the Phoenix metro area with my husband and our 2 dogs. So talking about our kind of DNA testing, I grew up as an only child, right? So I just had that life and that scope and that purview of like being an only child and kind of just navigating through life. And, had a wonderful childhood. My parents' photos here. And I guess I never really thought about exploring DNA testing. I did have a lot of curiosity about, what I might have been genetically predisposed to. So I looked for things more of like from that scientific background because, going to a doctor and every time they ask you about your family history, there's always that kind of uncomfortable, like, I don't know any of it. But oddly enough, 23andMe was given to me as a gift, as a Christmas present from my employer at the time. And they told me that they wanted to give me something that I knew that I probably wouldn't buy for myself. And so I took the test like right when they first came out. It was in like 2016, got my results back, and by then the data I think hadn't really been established as much. So it, had me as like 1/3 Korean, 1/3 Japanese, 1/3 Chinese. It was definitely like in the early stages. So I thought, okay, this is interesting, and just kind of shelved it for a few years. And for some reason on a Sunday morning, I was getting ready to go do like a home project and decided to randomly log into my account. And that happened to be kind of the same time that Scott, I think, got his results back, and something in the account like flipped a switch that said, hey, it looks like we found someone who is your brother, and his name is Scott McCrary. And so it's kind of been just this amazing journey since then, getting to know Scott and then also learning about Lee this past year, just amazing. So going from an only child to having 2 amazing siblings has been just, I don't have words, but fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie, for sharing that. All right, Lynn, are you ready?
I'm ready now. Yeah. So my name's Lynn Summer. I was adopted from Seoul, Korea, around 4 months of age, to a small town in Minnesota, Stillwater. And I have one younger brother who was also adopted from Gwangju. My parents were pretty awesome when we were little and brought us over to Korea, like 3 or 4 times, I think it was. From a very early age, I was very interested in my birth family, especially my birth mother. I was upset about it, and I was sad, and I had all these questions. And so being able to be in Korea, starting at, I think the youngest I was 10, and then going up until I was 18, was pretty significant for me. It wasn't until I was 18 that I tried to do just a little search through Holt in Seoul, and they found out some information about my birth mother. They told me that she had gotten married and had 2 other children after me. They contacted her via phone, and she denied being able to talk to me, and said that it would be very bad for her life if any of her past came out. So I went through a lot of grieving time with that. Few years later is when I took the DNA test. I don't know why I really did it, because I had kind of come to a closure moment with myself of not opening that door up. But I think I just had a curiosity, kind of like Katie. I was looking for more of the medical side of things. I'm a nurse by trade, and so I guess I just, same thing, going to doctor's appointments and not knowing anything, or having anything to hang my hat on was a little, I don't know, disturbing for me, I guess. So I wanted to know that. And I started with Ancestry, and then I did a 23andMe after Paige was like, do this. I wasn't expecting it. It was just a random email. I think Paige had both emailed me on both websites, and then, or both apps, and she had Facebook stalked me. And so it wasn't until I read the Facebook message, I was like, oh, somebody's trying to contact me. And from then on, I mean, we met up, and it was just the coolest experience meeting her and sitting down with her. I get chills thinking about it, because I never thought that I would meet anyone that had any sort of the same DNA as I did. And it's been great getting to know her and having this relationship.
Wonderful. So thank you all so much for introducing yourselves and sharing more about your experiences, first with DNA testing, and then also some of you with the search process and why you wanted to do DNA, and also some of you about why you wanted to search. So for those of you who didn't go into background about searching, did you do searching before DNA testing, or were you interested in searching? And did that lead you into wanting to do DNA testing?
I mean, I can talk a little more about, I guess, my process of searching. So as I said, I started before I even thought about DNA testing. I did a search through Holt, which was my agency. And they were able to locate my birth father. So I sent a letter and some photos over, and he ended up writing back, but, and I've since written more letters, but I haven't received anything else back from him over a few years. But I was given enough information to find out, that the circumstances were just not good, and they didn't have, they just couldn't financially care for me at the time. And our birth parents apparently got married later on, and that they did have 2 other biological children that I found out about. This was before I did the DNA search, so I didn't know about Katie and Scott, but they had 2 other biological children that they ended up keeping with them and were caring for. And they've since divorced, and apparently their relationship is not really good at present, from what I understand. So I found out that I had 2 full biological siblings over in Korea, and that was a whole nother process of going through that experience, finding out, that there are people that exist as a family unit. It's I think we all kind of consider different situations when we're considering doing DNA testing or doing birth search, where you kind of come up with like all the different scenarios and you try to prepare yourself as best as you can, so you think about, what if I find my parents and I find out that they've died, or they don't want any contact? Or it could be this dream scenario that we all kind of hope for sometimes, or you're saying, oh, we found them and they were searching for me their whole lives, and it was this beautiful reunion. I think we all have a little hope for that. So it's been, obviously a roller coaster. But that's why, as I said, when I did the DNA testing, I was fully expecting nothing, because they didn't allude to any older children that they had also given up. There was just no sign in any of the paperwork or anything that my father had said in his letter that gave any indication that there were other children relinquished for adoption prior to me. So this was, a whole nother experience. But I mean, I guess Katie and Scott can probably talk a little more also about that. I don't know if you guys want to jump in or not.
Well, yeah, I can jump in a little bit. So I had never really thought about searching for family or, parents, anything like that biologically. I had always just kind of in my head, played out the fantasy that, I was given up for a better life here in America, a better family. I'd be provided for, much better than I would have in Korea. Because I always, probably just because I didn't want to deal with the fact of, dealing with abandonment and things like that growing up. So I had never really thought about it until, we found out about Lee, and she told us her story about finding our birth father, and, actually had some pictures of him and the other 2 siblings that we have. And then, especially looking at the picture of our birth father, I can see, a lot of similarities in myself and him, like physically. So that, I think the whole story and seeing the picture and things really got me thinking. It's like, well, maybe I try this, and if nothing happens, whatever, I'm still in the same boat that I am now. So I reached out through my adoption agency, Dillon International, based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And, I sent them all the information. I'll be honest, I think it happened pretty quickly, within a couple months or so of me sending them that. They got back to me, said that they had located an address for our birth mother. And, so I wrote a letter, sent some pictures of all of us and me as a kid and things like that. And then they got back to me basically saying that, she was happy that we were all good and healthy, but she didn't want contact with us. So even though I wasn't expecting anything, that still hurt. But through that, at least she did, like Lee said here, we got confirmation that there were 2 other siblings. She did also say that she did give up 2 other siblings to adoption, because I mentioned it in the letter. But yeah, I mean, that was pretty much my story as far as searching, and, maybe things will change in the future. Who knows?
And for me, I hadn't done any DNA testing prior to, and hadn't really started a search. I think, part of me not only being raised as like an only child, right? But I think part of my story and the way that I healed and moved on was that I just made the assumption and had accepted that my parents had passed away. And so I just, kind of created this narrative that I was just kind of here, just existing. And I've started to really explore, I think, a lot, of my past, because I realized just recently that, whenever I would think about my adoption story, it was just like I suddenly appeared as this baby on a plane and there was nothing prior. But I've recently started to, explore that, because I think something wonderful that has come out of this is, like you mentioned earlier, just feeling like there's someone else on this earth that has my DNA. And so in a strange way, that gave me this sense of fulfillment that I hadn't felt before, because I felt so much more literally connected to this earth and just in life. So a lot of what I've learned, is from Lee sharing the writings and the news that she learned of our father, and then Scott sharing what he's learned from our mother. I was adopted through Welcome House, who no longer is operating as an adoptive agency. So any records and requests that I've made do have to go through the court system in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So I'm in the process of applying for and sending my request in. There is, approval that needs to be signed off on by a judge for me to gain access to my adoptive records, if they do exist, if Welcome House did actually send them over to there. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you to the three of you for sharing that, for sharing your experiences. I don't know if Paige and Lynn, if you would like to share any more about your experiences or, searching. I know in your introductions you did a little bit, but if you'd like to go into a little bit further about why that led you into doing DNA testing. Yes, no?
Sure.
No,
I think I talked a little much when I was doing my introductory, but I wasn't sure how much to explain. But yeah, I just, after turning 18 and going through Children's Home Society, wasn't really, finding much. And DNA testing wasn't really big, back then. So that wasn't even a thought. And then it just kind of, got really big, and in the Korean adoptee groups, more people were talking about it. So I was like, I think it was 2018 is when I jumped on to do the ancestry DNA. But yeah, it just, I don't know. I just was like, well, I kind of hit a roadblock, and why not, and there's a few other ones that I've done, but it's kind of the same, you get the same info. And like I was saying before, the, 450 cousins or whatever was really cool just to see that in itself. So then when I found Lynn, that was just awesome. But I haven't really, that's basically it. I check often. We do have, I do have found 3 to 4 cousins. So it's getting a little bit more detailed, but, and then I see that a lot of them are also connected with Lynn. So I think it's just going to keep getting, closer and a little bit better too. So we'll see it and see what goes from there.
I guess I just I always toy with the idea of going back and doing another search or trying to investigate more. I'm trying so hard to walk this fine line of, respecting my birth mother's decision. And it's just, I don't know, it's hard for me to grasp, especially with being pregnant and about to be a mom myself. It's hard for me to really fully understand how she wouldn't want to connect with us. So I just keep kind of crossing my fingers and hoping that maybe someday, my other 2 siblings will pop up, or maybe she'll pop up onto this. And so I have this dream that could potentially happen. But then I think that I'm also a little bit scared too, because I've heard the horror stories that everyone hears about, and they meet their birth parents and it's not the meeting that they wanted. And being a gay woman, that's a big fear of mine, just knowing the Korean culture. And, I don't want to disappoint her. So there is a lot of hesitation on my end when it comes to doing an official search and really kind of digging away at that. But then, for Paige too, I want to help her as much as possible, because I know that she hasn't had as much information as I have had. And I'm on this weird line of trying to navigate through this all. So I don't know, maybe further search will be in my future. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll take it as it comes.
kind of like life, take it as it comes. All right, wonderful. So I know that all of you have shared why you started the DNA testing process, but did any of you have any concerns doing DNA testing? Because there's things out there about, oh, they're gonna sell your DNA, or they're gonna sell it to another country, or they're gonna use it for research or whatever. I mean, there's all these theories out there. Did any of you have any concerns, or were you just very excited just to do DNA, or what were your thoughts? Just excited or happy, concerns, thoughts?
I was just excited because I just love doing new things, and I don't know, I was just kind of like, I don't know where I was going with this. My brain is all over the place. Okay, somebody else go.
I'll go because when I first found out about these DNA tests, and a lot of my friends, especially adoptees, like they were jumping on it right away, and they were saying like, this is it, this is our chance. And I felt like the marketing was really kind of like exploitative almost for adoptees, because it's such a big market of people that just desperately want information. So at first I was like hardcore railing to everybody against all these tests. I was just like, don't do it. We don't know about the privacy laws. We don't have any answers, and they're being really exploitative. So I like railed against them for a very long time. And for whatever reason, I have zero idea why this change happened in my brain. One day I was just like, I don't care anymore. And I was like, I guess I must have over time weighed out the possible value of getting like any information versus the possible, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but but I guess at some point the value of it outweighed the risk of it, so that was what happened to me. Now I'm just like, okay, everybody do it. Like I found my siblings and it's amazing. But I was very against them for a while. It's strange, and I can't explain the change, but it was worth it, obviously, for me.
Okay, I'll go. So I was just excited, but it was everybody else hearing of what I was doing. They're like, well, I wouldn't do that if I were you, what are they going to do with your DNA? You're going to be convicted of murder? Like just stupid stuff like that. And I'm like, Lynn knows, I'm just super easygoing. Who cares? Whatever, we'll figure it out. Like I was just more of the excited part, and wasn't really, all that was kind of just pushed aside. And I was just trying to ignore everybody else that they don't know what this journey is like. So I just went ahead with it.
I think I had some of the same reactions. People were very skeptical over where my DNA was going to end up. And you're right, Paige. Like people don't know that this path that we walk, being a Korean adoptee, and I'm like, screw them. Like whatever, I'm going to do what I want to do with my DNA. I don't know. But I guess it was more other people judging me for being so open and like spitting in this container and sending it into God knows where. But I was okay with it.
I would say I was okay with it too. Like admittedly it sat on my shelf for a month or two because I thought like, what could really come out of this? And so I had zero expectations whatsoever. And I figured that anyone who like really wanted my DNA probably already had my DNA. So I was fine with it.
Yeah, I had no worries about it really at all. Like Katie said there, if anybody really wanted any sort of information on me, they probably already had it from who knows what else in the past. So it didn't really bother me one way or the other.
Great. No, and some of you have mentioned just, other people judging you for doing DNA testing or saying things. And an adoptee, they wanted to be here, but they're not, to watch. And so they actually asked, how has family support been from you either doing DNA testing to finding a family member? How has that been? Has it been strained or have they been excited? How has your family support been?
I'll go on this. So my family has been pretty supportive of everything. They are all very happy for me when I, told them about Katie the first time around, and they all think, it's a cool situation. The science of it all, that we're able to do things like this nowadays. I will say this, that my father was a little bit upset when he initially found out, just for the reason that they felt like they were lied to by the adoption agency, whether they were given correct or incorrect information about me having siblings. So that was their biggest, I guess, focal point of being upset about it. But otherwise, they've all been very acceptive of it. I have a pretty good relationship with my adoptive family, so I know that's not necessarily true for everybody else. I am lucky in that case. So for me, at least, everything has been pretty good. It hasn't changed anything about how we interact with each other. They all just seem very happy for me, which I love.
Yeah, I can say that growing up as an only child, I think I just became really, really close with my mom and dad, and they were there right from the start when I started, kind of digging in when I was 18 years old, and just very, very supportive. They never had the, like, I don't think they ever had the feeling like, don't forget about us, but very, like, they knew for health reasons that I was digging, really wanted to find out biological mother, any siblings, father, if they could find him, just basically, yeah, health reasons. So they were very supportive of, anything that you can do that's positive, that can push you forward to what my goals were. So yeah.
So my family has been super, super supportive. They're like overly interested to the point where they're asking a ton of questions just every time I see them, and they're like overly excited, So I've gotten to the point where I kind of like, I want to give myself time to go through this and have this with my siblings instead of feeling like I need to like spew it all out for everybody, because it does sometimes feel like, I know they care about me and there's no question about that, but sometimes it does feel a little like voyeuristic, like even with just my friends, or not always family, but people that I know, they're just like, oh my gosh, this is, and it's super interesting. It's something that you don't hear about a lot. But I have found that I've been like, I guess, being more protective about it for myself, just because I don't feel like everybody needs to know everything immediately, and they will get to learn it and I will share it with them over time, but it's been like a process. I want to kind of slow it down and give myself time to work through everything. And it's been more like setting boundaries, well, everybody is always super supportive and there haven't been any bad reactions or anything like that, but it's just people, I mean, even with adoption, when you see an adoptive family out in public, sometimes people will just think like, oh, you can ask all these questions and it's fine because like these people are here. And I would never ask a person about their divorce or something really personal about them because it's just inappropriate. People don't have that same understanding of boundaries, I think, when it comes to adoption. So at least in my experience, I've just been kind of like setting more clear boundaries and like letting people in as I feel comfortable once I've had time to process it all.
I can go. I think my family's been supportive. I think they're delicate as well in terms of, they'll ask a couple questions here and there, but I think, they've given me kind of that, holding that power to start the conversation, so that if there is news or if there's, something that I want to talk about, they kind of let me lead into the conversation. I definitely have been, we've encouraged each other, like same thing, right? Being an only child, like you're very close to your family. They're usually like very involved, which is a great thing. But, I think, we're just all like really honest in terms of our communication of, like there's some things that I'm holding for myself because like Lee said, like there's a lot that I need to process. But then at the same time, if there's ways that I can, kind of put them at ease sometimes, or if they're, they have questions, because now, seeing how, I guess, adoptive or adoption is being handled now versus what maybe like my parents were told, in the early 80s, things have changed a little bit. So, we're having those discussions about, what do you think was helpful? What do you think was hurtful? So I think it's actually opened us up to like another layer of just some really, really intense dialogue. So same thing, boundaries again, but I think overall it's been a good process and we're navigating it, pretty well. So but ultimately they see the the smiles on our faces, and I, share with them about our like belly laughs. And I've never had that like belly laugh that I have that just happens so naturally with Scott and Lee. So I think they're just really happy for us overall.
My family's been very supportive. My adoptive family is quite large. There's a ton of them. So they've all asked a lot of questions. But they've needed some education too when it comes to asking things that are a little too personal. My parents have obviously known since I was little that I struggled with being adopted and finding my identity. I mean, I think my sexuality was definitely, it mixed in with all of the abandonment and those sort of issues that I was dealing with too, but they've been there since the get-go and they've been supportive. And like I said, they brought us to Korea, and there have been many nights that I've been crying late into the night, and my mom has been there and been encouraging and understanding. And so when they found out that I had met Paige, they were over the moon. I think it's cool with my younger brother. He never really had any interest in finding any of his biological family, but he's starting to kind of ask a few more questions. And I think he actually just picked up a 23andMe test around the holidays. And so he's starting to kind of turn his wheels a little bit, which I think is cool because, we didn't really have that connection before and we never really talked about it very much. So yeah, it's been very supportive. It's been very good. Obviously you're going to get the people that don't know how to censor themselves, but it's been a good response.
Wonderful. I think in life and with adoption in general, that's just something we always have to watch out for, is those that can't censor themselves. That's just something as adoptees we have our own little radar for those that can't censor themselves. But the 5 of you have to really watch that with all those questions. So again, thank you so much for letting us ask these questions to all of you, which leads me into the next portion is if anybody has a question they'd like to ask, please feel free to put it in the chat box. And I will be censoring them. So, but I mean, you can put it in the chat box, but I will be censoring them. So if they're inappropriate, they won't be asked, but ask away. In the meantime, there was another question from somebody who wasn't able to be here. They asked, what are some, or have you found any commonalities with the family member that you found? I mean, and they listed, whether it be like a physical trait or a hobby, a health concern. I mean, that one you don't have to answer, but physical trait, a hobby, or anything else like that.
So Katie and Scott and me, we are constantly we're group texting like throughout the day, every single day, just random things. Like the first couple of weeks when I had found out about them, it was just random stuff. It was like, do you like cilantro? No. Okay. I hate it too, and just literally like everything you could think of to compare to another person, we did it and we've been through it all. We do have a bunch of similarities, I think. The most strange one that I always attributed to nurture was that Katie had sent a handwritten letter to her house and my husband looked at it and he goes, did you write this? Because our handwriting is like exactly the same. And it's very strange. It might just be a total coincidence, but it was really interesting to see, our similarities like laid out there again. Every time we find out something new, it's like a shock. We're just like, oh my gosh, because to have this kind of connection is really incredible. It's an experience that's different from anything I've ever had because like I've been close to people and obviously my adopted family is great and I'm like super, I have great relationships with all of them, but this was just something that kind of, it just clicked and we all just kind of like got along really well. And there was no, and this is a picture that we, on one of our Zoom calls, when we all realized that we made the same face, that was just our default. We would kind of make this funny little smirk, but it's just always things like that. And it just clicked. And it was something that like, when you meet other adults, sometimes you know, you have little awkward phases, and it's a little bit strange to kind of socialize with people that you don't really know. But with them, it was never a question. We just kind of meshed immediately, and we're like best friends, and it's really fun. It's fun to experience and kind of develop over time. Can't wait to meet them in person.
Yeah, I was so when me and Lynn first met, it was just the weirdest feeling ever. You know, we met at a restaurant, and just, you know, looking at each other across the table was just so weird. Just to have, you know, like it was just looking at someone, you know, especially because I'm from a small town, so there's literally no other Asians around. So just to see her, and then just to see that we had similarities. You know, we've talked, gosh, I can't even think of, you know, I think we were out to dinner, and I was like, oh, I just gained all my weight in my stomach. She's like, so do I. And just stupid things like that. But it was just really funny to kind of see that. And then I have, you know, we share photos on Facebook and stuff, and everyone's just, you know, certain pictures, they're like, are you sure you guys aren't sisters? You know, especially when she had longer hair. You know, I shared some pictures with my close friends, and just some similarities was just really cool to see, you know, and in person, just not, you know, through pictures.
There are a few pictures of Paige and I that look very similar when my hair was like your length right now, which is pretty crazy and cool to see. And then I feel like when we sat down with my wife, Lindsay, and she picked up on the same mannerisms that we just our hands, or we talk with our hands, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, there are a lot of similarities. And when Paige and I first started talking, I mean, we were the same way that the three of you are. We were texting constantly. It was like a brand new relationship, like dating wise. It was just like random questions going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was really cool to see the similarities that we have.
I think one of the things that stands out for me is that when we were comparing pictures of all of us, like when we were little, but I remember one time, Erin Scott, like she mentioned that we had like the same toes, and she's like, you guys have like the, you know, just like the same little like ways that our toes are or something. So it's just like those little things that, you know, I was like, okay, or we like ask each other, like, can you do, you know, this, or try to make a hand gesture, or like, you know, I don't know, little like funny things, but we're like trying to like learn and catch up on so many years, and just randomly we'll be like on a Thursday, like, do you prefer green or purple? And so I think that's been super fun.
I think one of the coolest things for me, finding out about both Lee and Katie, is like just similar views on things in life, you know, politically or whatever it may be. But the fact that we all generally, I think, have the same sense of things with that, it makes things a lot easier, I would say, than, you know, dealing with some other people. But that's interesting as well, because, you know, we were all raised in different parts of the country with different families and things, but still end up having, you know, similar views on a lot of things is always, you know, a nice, you know, cherry on the cake there, I guess.
Wonderful. And I know that they had mentioned for all the panelists, the physical resemblance are truly striking, siblings and the first cousins. So they did mention that in the chat box. So, all right, so there is a question, and there's no pressure. Again, you can answer, you can defer, you can feel free to share as much as you would like, but here's a question. For the siblings, did your files all have similar information, or were there differences on what the individual adoption files contained?
Okay, so our files, since finding out about Katie and Scott, we've kind of tried to compare what information we've had in our files and whatever we've gotten since from like searching and stuff like that. And to be honest, it has kind of just created a ton more questions than I think we may have had before, because the information that, like, let's say the information I had in my file, I was told my whole life, like, this is what we had and this is how it was. But then we compare it to like Scott's or Katie's, and it's totally different. And it's something like that just doesn't even sound familiar to anything that was in my file. So it's hard to, so I mean, obviously to say that it's been very different in all of our files, and that it's hard to kind of figure out what's reliable information and what's not, just because there are so many barriers to, you know, finding things out. And there's all these different levels to try and protect. I think, you know, it was originally meant to protect both the adoptee and the birth family, but I think it skews a lot more towards the birth family, and that it's just harder for us to find out, you know, what's real, what's not, what's reliable, what's not. So, you know, we're working on it.
I'll just say on that as well, like she said, comparing information. Now, I don't think any of us have a ton of information individually from, you know, our files at all. But I remember one thing that pointed out is like the ages that our supposed parents listed, you know, when giving us up for adoption, you know, they were always different, but not different in a way that would make sense. Like one of us would show like their ages were older or younger when that wouldn't have made sense, you know, chronologically for having the three of us there. So it seems that, you know, there's a lot of information that either was, you know, falsified or given incorrectly for whatever reason. So yeah, like Lee said, it brings up a lot more questions than you ever thought you would think of, you know, with something you think it's so straightforward.
And I think too, that's kind of sparked, you know, I didn't have that interest in really digging in and kind of trying to obtain more information, but now I'm definitely intrigued because, you know, I see Scott has one bit of information and then Lee has another bit of information, and we're somehow hoping, I'm like, okay, maybe miraculously, like the third bit of information, when I can finally get it, will answer some of those, or at least, you know, we'll have, okay, well, 2 documents say more similar this, or 2 say this. Because I think that that's something, you know, it's trying to kind of accept the unknown, or that maybe we won't ever really have any definitive answers.
Thank you so much to the 3 of you for sharing that. So here's another question. First off, thank you so much for sharing your amazing stories. Have you talked with other adoptees who have used DNA testing and connected through second or third cousins? I've done 23andMe and there is a first cousin, but no response. The first are third and fourth cousins.
So I did Ancestry, then 23andMe, and then I uploaded data to a few other ones. And there was a second cousin that popped up on one of them. I think it was it Family Tree DNA? I can't remember the exact one, but so outside of Katie and Lee, the closest thing that I ever had popped up was maybe a third or fourth cousin. So I sent an email out to the supposed or possible second cousin, just because I felt, you know, if I had never, you know, found about Katie and Lee, and this was the closest thing that ever popped up for me, I think it would still be interesting possibly to make a connection with that person. So emailed them, and we emailed back and forth a couple times. But it seems that that cousin was more just searching for immediate family, parents, things like that. Not that they were rude or anything, but connection kind of just stopped because it wasn't what they were looking for.
Yeah, the beginning of Lynn and my search, once we got together, well, Christine was with too, but we did a dinner with Melissa was her name, and she was a third cousin, I think, and a third cousin to Lynn and I, and then so that was really cool because she was also in the Twin City area. She was adopted. She has since found her family, her biological family, but we kind of lost touch, so we haven't really talked much. And like I said, there are a lot of distant cousins, but there are a few you know, every now and then I'll get that email, you have more DNA relatives. So then I'm like, oh, let's see if there's any good ones in this one. So, and there's been a couple, third, I believe, that have popped up. So a little bit closer. So that's really cool. So we're just kind of chatting back and forth. And then, you know, maybe I see Lynn, it's a lot easier in person, but just to kind of see, you know, they're mutual, you know, they're same with Lynn. So I always thought that was really cool that, you know, that it lets you know, every time there's a new one, and to see how close and DNA, you know, you guys are related. But yeah.
So on my results, outside of Scott and Katie, the closest relative that came up in my results was like a possible second to third cousin. So I have reached out to him and we've been emailing back and forth. But I think the hardest thing about that situation is that like we're all kind of in the same boat. Like I haven't seen or heard of anybody that is coming into this and finds a connection and they're like, oh, here, I know all of this stuff that I can give to you. Like we're all kind of searching for those closer biological relatives because we don't have them, and that's the reason we're going into it. So it ends up being like, I'm adopted too, and like here are some things we have in common, but we don't have that like shared information or the background to share with one another. So while it's really nice and it's great to have those connections and it brings a different feeling, it tends to kind of like fizzle off just because, you know, we don't have the information that we're all kind of looking for. So it's tough when it's not something close. I mean, I hit the jackpot with with this situation, but it's tough. You know, we're all trying to piece it all together, and hopefully, you know, with more people signing up and doing it, it will get better. But you know, there's time. We'll see, I guess.
So we do have just a couple more minutes. So anybody who has any last minute questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Excuse me. Just in answer to that last question, I have heard of at least one or two adoptees who they did connect with, I think, a second cousin. And then through that second cousin, they were able to connect with their birth family. So I mean, it wasn't anybody that I worked with directly, but it was, you know, in a Facebook group or a story I read online. But it is possible, but as these five have mentioned, it is really hard when you do connect with somebody who's not an immediate relative or first cousin, just because you want to have that immediate connection. You want to have that, oh, you're my sibling, or oh, you're my first cousin. And so if it's further off, it's harder. But that being said, there are some adoptees who say like, oh, hey, we're related at some point, and that's really cool. So let's see. Okay, so somebody said, I found a second cousin on 23andMe. So then we partnered our searches. But one thing that we discovered is we have different approaches to searching and what are appropriate next steps. Now, when I search, I feel like everything I do might help or jeopardize her search. Not really a question unless you feel like sharing if you have found similar differences in approaches amongst you all. So I'm assuming if you have differing points of view of searching or having further contact with birth family relatives. Again, you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable.
I think with Paige and I, we were kind of on different levels of our search. I had closure for myself earlier on than Paige did. And so there have been some differences going forward with how hard to search and what we're going to put into it. And it has been a little hard just because I don't want to hold Paige back from anything, but then I'm also trying to, you know, stay true to myself and respect my birth mother and not invade her space anymore. And so there are a lot of, you know, hurdles to kind of jump over, just in that aspect. We're at different stages of our, I don't know what, search or adoption story. I don't know how to explain it, but we are at like a little bit different levels. And so it does make for a little bit challenging when it comes to the next big push. And I don't think that we've I don't know. I don't think we've figured it out what we're going to do next. And I don't want to hold Paige back. And it makes me feel bad because I feel like I am holding her back. And yeah, so there are some challenges.
Yeah, I'd agree with Lynn. I'm just, again, super easygoing. So I just am kind of waiting if she changes her mind, but I don't want to push her or make her feel uncomfortable, just, because I want to remain close and just be true, to each other. So I just go with the flow. Whatever. I'm here and just hoping that eventually I can find more information, but 36, hopefully, have more time, a lot more time to still kind of dig and everything. So I'm not too worried about the situation, but would love to eventually, dig deeper. So we'll see when that happens or if it does. So yeah.
I think, Lynn, I get what you're saying, where you're, I don't know. That very much resonated with me because I kind of feel the same way. Like I, didn't really come into DNA search or to even find out really about, I think, our biological parents, but I'm also like, okay, well, what if the agency, like there's something missing in the papers that I could gain access to that would shed light on, information and make everything match, right, with Lee and Scott's story. And so I know I get frustrated. Like I hit the roadblock with, okay, well, your organization no longer has the records. Okay, well, now reach out to this person. So I know personally I get frustrated, but I also have that like where I don't want to hold anything back, but I'm also like, okay, I'm honoring my time and honoring my frustration. And I want to be going into it, with the right energy, with the right mindset, and also not trying to get expectations up too much, because I don't want to just, I just don't want to be disappointed. So, but I get that kind of just being on a different timeline.
Okay, so thank you all so much. And I think the last question is, what advice would you give anybody who is contemplating doing DNA testing, DNA searching? Any advice?
Just do it.
Yeah, I would say if you have any inkling of, when you keep thinking about it or, I feel like it's so all over the social media of the Korean adoptee groups, that's a lot. It's basically, I feel like a lot of the conversations. So that's actually, I think what pushed me to do it. But I just feel like, if you're curious, for me, I would be like, oh, it doesn't hurt to try. Maybe I'll get some information out of it. Don't hold too many expectations just because you don't want to get let down. And just kind of go with your gut feeling, I would say.
I'd agree completely with that. Just like you said, just do it. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe you're exactly where you are now, so no changes. For me, I don't see any harm in trying it. Because I've had great outcomes with it, but for any other person, I see like Paige was saying there on social media groups for Korean adoptees, there's so many people I've seen that are worried that what if, I find somebody and then I somehow affect my biological family's life, and I don't want to do that. And that's great that you're concerned for their, well-being and their lifestyle and things like that. But in the end, it's your life. I figure you might as well do with what you want.
Yeah, I guess my advice would be pretty similar to everybody else's. I got to the point where the value of a DNA test was worth more than whatever risk could come along with it. But just do it for yourself. If you're at a point where you're considering it and you think that you are ready for no results or any results or all the results, just if you're at a place where it seems like a good option, then do it. you know, but it's got to be for you. Don't let other people push you into it. Or if you have things that are really, really holding you back, then, you know, everybody's got to move at their own pace and do what's right for them. I think it's really individualized. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So, but I'm for it, obviously.
I think I agree with everyone else. You know, I had no expectations, and I am just filled with so much love and joy that I never thought I would have experienced. So, you know, obviously I know that like ours is a unique story, but I think just in that little bit of, you know, feeling connected was totally worth it for me. So I would say go for it.
Wonderful. And so thank you all so much for that great advice, and also for sharing your stories and giving us a little glimpse into your experiences, being vulnerable and sharing and answering some of these questions. And thank you all so much to the audience out there, even though we can't see your faces. I'm just picturing all of your lovely faces out there. So thank you all so much for joining us. Again, there will be a recording, so if somebody wasn't able to join us, just let me know. And while the video or recording is processing, we'd be happy to share it with you all. So again, thank you all so much. Stay safe and healthy. We will be having another Who We Are panel next month, and we'll be posting that more on social media and in our newsletter. But thanks again so much, and have a wonderful Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.